Republicans are refusing to extend healthcare subsidies, falsely claiming it's about free healthcare for immigrants. Their obstruction has led to a government shutdown, which is now on day 27, I might add, that's hurting millions of Americans, and that is now spilling over to those who rely on SNAP benefits, aka food stamps. A USDA memo says that the Trump administration will not use emergency funds in order to provide November food benefits. We'll get into the details, but first, since you're already here, make sure you subscribe and hit that bell so you'll be the first to know when we post. Y'all already know the drill. This is Pragmotiv News, and it's your boy Trey. So before we dive in, I want to address where I've been. You may have noticed I've been MIA for about 2 weeks. The last show I hosted was on October 10th. I've mentioned before that I have primary immune deficiency, which is a condition that weakens my immune system. And about 2 weeks ago, I got sick and it kept getting worse to the point where I ended up getting admitted to the hospital for a few days. I'm doing better now, and I'm very happy to be back. I really appreciate all the warm wishes, thoughts, and prayers from everyone. I especially appreciate Cameron for holding it down and filling in for me while I was out. So now that we got that out the way, let's get into the show. Right now, millions of Americans are wondering how they'll eat next month. The government is shut down, and Donald Trump's administration has decided not to use roughly $5 billion with a B, dollars in emergency funds that could keep food aid flowing. This choice leaves about 42 million people, 1 in 8 Americans, at risk of losing their Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program benefits, better known as SNAP. According to a U.S. Department of Agriculture memo obtained by the Associated Press, the agency says that contingency funds, quote, are not legally available for regular SNAP benefits. The USDA wrote that these funds are meant for emergencies like natural disasters such as Hurricane Melissa, which they claim could require immediate disaster relief efforts. But critics, including Democratic lawmakers and budget experts, argue that's not what the law says at all. They point out that SNAP is a mandatory spending program, which is money Congress has already approved. They say the law does allow contingency funds to be used in emergencies, just like this, when a shutdown threatens to cut off millions of people's food. This government shutdown was triggered by Republican resistance to extending the Affordable Care Act subsidies. GOP leaders claimed that the issue was about stopping the so-called free healthcare for immigrants. But their refusal to reach a deal has left major federal programs unfunded, including the one that helps families buy groceries. Instead of using available emergency funds to feed struggling Americans, the Trump administration is saving that $5 billion for unspecified future disasters, while breaking ground on a lavish $300 million ballroom attached to the east wing of the White House, a project that is erasing decades of history, which has included tearing down the White House movie theater that Presidents John F. Kennedy, Jimmy Carter, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, and Barack Obama have all watched movies in. The East Wing demolition that began earlier this month has already torn down parts of the historic structure built in 1942. Preservationists have called it an irreversible loss to American history. But the administration insists that the expansion is necessary for, quote, state events and diplomatic functions. A lot of people are asking the valid question of how can the government afford a $300 million ballroom, but not food for families during a shutdown? Now, the MAGA cult leaders would want us to believe that the $300 million is coming from private donations. From corporations, Trump has been shaken down with the threat of bankrupting tariffs. But I still don't believe 100% of this gaudy ballroom will be funded privately. And since he is so good at begging for money, why doesn't Trump ask these same corporations to donate money to the SNAP program? It's because he clearly doesn't care about starving kids. According to the Agriculture Department, any states that try to cover next month's SNAP benefits themselves won't be reimbursed. So if Illinois, for instance, wants to, come up with state money to help stopgap the program until the federal government comes back online with the funding, they won't get that money back. So governors across the country who want to step in and prevent hunger could be forced to spend their own state tax dollars with no help from Washington in sight. In Illinois alone, nearly 2 million residents rely on SNAP. And if the federal funding remains frozen, their benefits will vanish in November. Now, families are already lining up at food banks across the country, which are warning that they will be overwhelmed if the shutdown drags on. The contrast is staggering. While the administration claims its hands are tied legally, it has moved money already for other priorities. Billions to support military pay, hundreds of millions for special nutrition programs, and government construction. But not 1 cent of the $5 billion contingency fund to keep people fed. Food assistance isn't a partisan issue. SNAP feeds seniors, children, veterans, and working Americans who simply can't make ends meet. These benefits usually range from a few dozen to a couple $100s a month, barely enough to survive. And now, because of Trump, that lifeline could be cut off entirely. Here's something interesting that most of us don't know. 44.6% of SNAP recipients identify as non-Hispanic white, with only 27% identifying as Black and 21% identifying as Hispanic. Roughly 88% of recipients are natives to the United States, and only 12% are foreign-born. All of this information is according to the Pew Research Center. So there has to be a real good mix of low-income MAGA voters in these numbers who are about to fuck around and find out come November. So in previous shutdowns, administrations from both parties have found ways to keep SNAP going temporarily. But this time, the Trump White House is refusing to act, choosing instead to let the funding lapse while blaming the other side for the consequences. Americans are facing empty plates while marble tiles and chandeliers rise on Pennsylvania Avenue. $5 billion reserved for emergencies could feed 42 million people next month, but it's sitting untouched. Meanwhile, what is Trump doing? He's dancing all the way on the other side of the world while Americans here at home suffer. Yet again, offbeat. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and follow at Pragmotiv News everywhere to stay pragmotivated. Also, remember, you can find us across all the major platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Audible, and iHeartRadio so that you can listen to us even when you're out on the go. And if you haven't already, please share this video with your family and friends to help us spread the word and grow the Pragmotiv family. We would greatly appreciate it. Until next time, peace.